All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a talk by Dr. K.N. Jacob that's really got people talking. He's laid out this very specific system for what he says men want in a marriage, and he calls it the 8 S's. So yeah, let's get right into it.
So Dr. Jacob kicks things off with this really potent verse from Proverbs. He uses it to frame the whole conversation. The idea is that a wife's character can either be her husband's crown, his glory, or it can be like a decay in his bones. So right from the get-go, he's setting up this high-stakes choice that really sets the tone for his whole argument.
And this, of course, leads to the big question. He says it's a question he hears all the time from women. Women who feel like they're doing it all, they're taking care of the house, helping pay the bills, raising the kids, but the relationship is still just not working. He believes he's got the definitive answer.
So to answer that question, he first zooms in on what he claims is the one single universal need that's underneath everything else in a marriage.
And he says he's got the data to back this up. Now, this is from his own conferences, so it's anecdotal. But he claims that when he asks both men and women, what's the number one thing a man wants, the answer is pretty much always the same: respect. According to him, over 80% of both men and women land on that one word.
Okay, so if respect is the answer, how do you actually do it? Dr. Jacob says, look, it's one thing to know this, but it's another thing to actually put it into practice. And to help bridge that gap, he came up with a very specific framework based on his talks with men.
And this is where his solution comes in, the 8 S's. It's a list of 8 action words, and they all start with the letter S. He presents this as the practical, real-world definition of what respect actually looks like to a man. So let's break them down one by one.
The first 2 S's, he groups them together, and they're all about building the foundation of the partnership, basically how you talk to each other and how you back each other up.
First up, speak. He says men don't do well with hints or clues. Communication has to be direct. But it's not just about speaking your mind. He says there are 3 crucial parts. First, why are you saying it? It can't come from a place of malice. Second, how are you saying it? The tone needs to be temperate, self-controlled. And third, and this is key, when do you say it? Because according to him, timing is absolutely everything.
For the second S, support, Dr. Jacob brings in this quote from Einstein. He paints this picture of marriage being like a bicycle built for 2. Both people have to keep pedaling to stay upright. This is all about mutual responsibility, especially when it comes to money. His point is, if one person's job or business takes a hit, the other has to be ready to pedal harder for a while to keep the whole family moving forward.
All right, the next chunk of S's gets a bit more personal. This section is all about what he describes as a man's need for emotional stability and personal space inside the relationship.
So to explain the third S, safety, he brings up this proverb. And he's not talking about physical safety here. This is all about emotional safety. Dr. Jacob makes this claim that a man's identity is totally tied up in what he does. So when he fails in his career, in a business, he needs home to be a safe place to land. A nagging or quarrelsome partner, he says, is just devastating at that moment.
Next up, number 4 is space. He's pretty clear that every man needs his me time to just decompress, whether that's watching a game or just being quiet. But, and this is a really important but, he says this is not a free pass to disappear. It comes with time accountability. A wife, he argues, has every right to know where her husband is, who he's with, and for how long.
The next point in this group is security, and this is where he introduces a pretty striking claim from his counseling work. He states that when a man cheats, he's seen over 80% of those marriages pull through. But when a woman cheats, he claims it's less than 20%. He uses this anecdotal data to argue that men are, at their core, more insecure, and so a wife's faithfulness is absolutely critical for the marriage to survive.
All right, we're at the final set of S's, and these are, you could say, the most prescriptive of the bunch. He frames them as the absolute core duties of a marriage, all of them anchored in a spiritual foundation.
So he kicks off this final section with sex, and he uses this verse from Corinthians to frame intimacy as a reciprocal duty. He argues that it's designed to meet each other's needs and, to help minimize the temptation to stray from the marriage.
Okay, but here's where his interpretation gets really specific.
He doesn't frame this as something based on mutual desire in the moment, but as a non-negotiable duty. He actually puts it this way: when either wants, both must want. And speaking directly to the women in his audience, he says this means when her husband wants sex, she must yield. For him, it's an obligation, plain and simple, not a favor.
All right, next up is service. He interprets this as actively investing in the marriage by continuously showing love. He uses this verse to make the point that this kind of expressed love acts like a powerful glue. It's strong enough to cover for all the mistakes and weaknesses that pop up long after the honeymoon is over.
And that brings us to the final S, and in his view, this is the most important one of all: Savior. The core idea here is pretty simple. A marriage just can't make it on its own strength. Dr. Jacob argues that by humbling themselves before God and praying together, a couple can resist what he sees as a tax on the family, which he considers the bedrock of society.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, Dr. Jacob's 8 S's really offer a detailed, faith-based roadmap for marriage. It's a very clear prescription, but it also brings up a much bigger question, doesn't it? In a world with so many different views on what a partnership should be, what do highly specific frameworks like this one really reveal about that powerful intersection of our faith, our culture, and our deepest beliefs about being a partner?